So I will be covering this, the spiritual aspect, and then Harsha Prabhu mainly will be giving a presentation, PowerPoint presentation, covering the secular, in other words, what people who are not devotees, how they relate to basically the same concerns, or some of the same concerns we have within the context of Varnashram, although they don't use the word Varnashram, although they are not devotees. I'll allow Harsha Prabhu, and we also put down the name of Madhava Prabhu and Hridoy Chaitanya Prabhu, who may want to add some comment as the presentation is given. He went to the room, he may or may not, I don't know. So in other words, at least from the spiritual perspective, it's meant to give a very broad overview of Varnashram, and the more we understand what has taken place in the past, over the centuries and whatnot, or more recently in the last few hundred years, then it can help us more clearly understand, hopefully, what we have today, what we're dealing with, and what we have to contend with. So, naturally, because, from the very beginning of Kali Yuga, we can all fairly easily understand that the system of Varnashram is in difficulty, because we have, because of the battle of Kurukshetra, and because Varnashram is based on qualified leadership, especially qualified brahmanas and qualified kings. So we know how in the Bhagavatam the whole list of kings, monarchs are listed, but then when it comes to Kali Yuga, there's no more list, because actually there are no more such qualified leaders. Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments on Varnashram a little bit in the context of Buddhism, and he mentions how Lord Buddha actually rejected, one of the reasons he rejected the Vedic literatures is actually because of misuse of the Varnashrama system, on the plea of sections in the Vedas that were allowing regulated animal sacrifices. The Brahmanas at that time just went overboard and just interpreted in their own way, and were allowing mass, killing of animals, etc. So, we can trace down how Varnashram, we're going back like a couple of thousand years, even 5,000 years ago, the whole system of Varnashram, in other words, although the terminology, especially in places like here in India, were there, the system was not followed properly. Even, let's say, if we come to the time of Lord Chaitanya, one of the arguments that is sometimes presented or given by devotees is that, Lord Chaitanya rejected Varnashram, you see. And what's important for us to understand is that actually in that conversation of Lord Chaitanya with Ramananda Roy, the whole conversation was to try and ascertain or describe what was actually the highest. Lord Chaitanya wanted to know, to understand what is the highest level of reality, or of the ultimate truth. And then Ramananda Roy was just going through different levels, and so what is important to understand is that Lord Chaitanya did not reject Varnashram per se, did not reject Varnashram as an institution. It's given by himself, it's given by Krishna. He rejected it as being the ultimate goal, because Varnashram is not a goal in itself. The goal is not to become a Brahmana. The perfection of life is not to become a sannyasi, etc. Whereas the process of bhakti devotional service is an end in itself, in that, the perfectional stage is that we will continue to perform devotional activity in the spiritual world. But Varnashram is a means to actually come to those higher platforms. So, we all recite, or we all are familiar with the very wonderful prayer of the six Goswamis, Nana Shastra Vicharanaya Ganipano, that we sing, whereby the Goswamis are glorified for having scrutinizingly studied, isn't it? The Vedic literatures, as ordered by Lord Chaitanya. What is important to note, and we'll go into details more on this, especially tomorrow, because again, this is still somewhat introductory, this first day. But an important concept is that the Goswamis of Vrindavan, and this is very important for us as devotees, especially devotees, at this particular stage of our development within our ISKCON society. The Goswamis of Vrindavan were especially requested by Lord Chaitanya to extract the principles of dharma as they relate especially to bhakti, or devotional service. What we will be establishing, what we hope to establish in one of the modules tomorrow, is that actually in the same way that the principles of Sanatan Dharma, as scrutinizingly studied by the Goswamis of Vrindavan, are important for the practice of bhakti devotional service. Similarly, in a similar way, there are basic and universal principles of Varnasrama Dharma, or the principles of Varnasrama Dharma, which are contained in the Vedic literatures, which are eternal teachings, are also very important for us to imbibe and to practice, or to introduce. In other words, when we speak of Sadharma, my understanding is that Sadharma, we should see it on two levels. On the level of bhakti, devotional service, pure devotional service to Krishna, number one. And secondly, we should see these principles of dharma on the level of Varnasrama Dharma, inasmuch as the principles of bhakti are eternally the same. So the system of Varnasrama Dharma is also the same, although because we're in Kali Yuga, it has not been followed or applied. Now, of course, later on that can bring a whole discussion that, but Lord Chaitanya, and that's one of the arguments that people give, has just given us the holy name, Harinam, so why give so much importance to Varnasrama? We'll come back to that later. I just wanted to make the point that the Goswamis were actually spending time, giving time in studying the Vedic literatures to extract, because they were ordered specifically by Lord Chaitanya to extract information and knowledge about bhakti specifically, or especially. The point I wanted to make is that it is important for us, in addition to also see and understand the importance of extracting from the Vedic literatures things or information, knowledge that is related also to Varnasrama Dharma. That may be a debatable point as we go along. I'll just leave it there for now. What's important to understand is that although Lord Chaitanya seemingly gave less importance, because at that time there was the caste system was very prominent, and Lord Chaitanya just wanted to introduce and flood the entire world with the holy name. He gave less, we could say, less importance or less attention, especially in the context of that conversation with Ramananda Roy, seemingly to Varnasrama. However, we see that personalities like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and then afterwards Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and our own Srila Prabhupada, they spoke about Varnasrama. And they actually, we read one reference a little earlier from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There's another reference actually which I'd like to read very briefly. This is taken from the Harmonist. I have the reference. It's Harmonist, volume number 25, in September of 1927, by from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writing. I'll just read this regarding Varnasrama Dharma. I just came across this recently. it is not the purpose of any patriotic Indian to destroy the Varnasrama Dharma. In bracket, the duties of 4 Varnas and the 4 stages. Means ashramas. Closing back bracket. It is the duty to eliminate the impurities that have crept into the system. In order to rejuvenate Varnasrama Dharma, it will be necessary to adopt the following principles. Number 1, no one's Varna will be settled by birth alone. We all understand what Prabhupada also has nicely explained. Number 2, the Varna of every person should be settled in accordance with the nature formed by the association of early years and the course of acquisition of knowledge and experience. So this is the end of the quotation. And then it does continue. There are 2 other points mentioned by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that some person imbued with the power of God will again establish the true Varnasrama Dharma in accordance with the divine dispensation. Just like predictions Bhaktivinoda Thakur predicted about the holy name being established all over the world. So, some person imbued with the power of God will again establish the true Varnasrama Dharma in accordance with the divine dispensation. Both Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta sometimes use words which were maybe not, providence, I guess, right? And then number 2, I think we've heard this one before. Within a short time, there will exist only one sampradaya or school in the realm of devotion, bhakti. Its name will be the Sri Brahma Sampradaya. All other sampradayas will merge in this Brahma Sampradaya. I'm just quoting or mentioning or referring to these authorities because, they are our direct acharyas, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And there's a book which we will be announcing tomorrow or the next day. And there's another quotation or reference by Srila Prabhupada regarding Bhaktisiddhanta and Varnasrama. And of course, there are many quotes. A few of them we'll try to bring in our discourses tomorrow. The point being that our acharyas, our immediate acharyas, especially the founder acharya of our society, spoke about, made reference to Varnasrama, and specifically Srila Prabhupada clearly wanted that it be established. I'll just keep this very short. Over the centuries we have seen how there are different oppositions have been there to the system of Varnasrama. Beginning, I mentioned about Lord, Buddhism, for example. Even Buddhism today rejects Varnasrama. Then, Muslim invasion, specifically in the context of India, the Christians, the whole British actually tried to destroy the whole, Vedic culture in so many ways. There's some very interesting references in that respect. And last but not least, some of our own Indian personalities, or people from India themselves, have tried to destroy. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur is making a direct reference in this quotation that it is not the duty of any Indian person to try and a patriotic Indian to do away with or destroy the system. Rather, we should correct the impurities within the system. This is important to hear and to understand. So in other words, I'm finishing on this point that from the spiritual perspective, it is clear, that it is there in our Shastra about Varnasrama. It is something that has been referred to by various authorities, and especially by our immediate acharyas, and therefore, just based on this very simple observation, it should be something of concern to us. If it was of concern to our acharyas, then whatever is of importance to them naturally should become of importance to us. And what they requested or desired, naturally we should try as faithful followers and disciples also put into practice. So that's my small presentation on the spiritual perspective, let's say, of Varnashram in this particular context. And I don't know if we should go now directly to the secular outlook.
You could see if there are some questions now.
Maybe one or two
these
brief
points.
questions.
Does anyone have any questions on these points or comments?
Or they could come later also.
Okay, then we can move on.
Yeah. Harsha Prabhu, yes. Maybe just to give a little cue for what is coming up right now, I'll just finish on this point that especially we see that in the presentation or the different instructions given by Srila Prabhupada, not only have our spiritual preceptors give an emphasis on the spiritual aspect of Varnashram, but Prabhupada has mentioned first is food, isn't it? In other words, Srila Prabhupada very much understood and wanted that the material external aspect also be in place. Okay.
Request Mother.
Can that be blocked? Okay, sorry.
We have a small Varnashram research team at SyamaRupa, and we were trying to work out various presentations related to Varnashram and the inspiration of Maharaj. And we made a series of presentation, not a big series, just to start off with 2-3 series of presentation. Why cities are not the best places to stay. So I've just modified that presentation to the secular outlook why Varnashram has to be implemented. So this is a structure. We just see what the secular approach, why cities are not the best places to stay. A few points on the planet in trouble. And the world is looking for solutions, and they are trying to come out with some solutions like eco-villages, etc. What are the shortcomings? They themselves know what are the shortcomings, but they don't know the solutions. So, conclusions, final thoughts, which I should be covering by 1:50. This is a conversation between Prabhupada and the disciples here. Prabhupada is asking, everyone should come to Varnashram, everyone should come to the farm. Why only householders? Rameshwar Prabhu is asking, in America there is a very big emphasis on getting people to join us by moving into our temples. Temple presidents are very eager to get as many people to move in as possible. But in the long run, most people cannot come up to the standard. Prabhupada, therefore I am advocating that they should come to farm. So they have to be encouraged to have a little bit of Krishna consciousness in their own home, make their own a temple. Rameshwar Prabhu is asking. Prabhupada said, no, let them go to the farm, New Vrindavan. Many people, most people in the world, they are Grihamedis and they cannot give it up so easily. Rameshwar, right? Prabhupada says, no, you remain. Come here with your wife, children, you remain Grihamedi. Jagdish Prabhu is asking, New Vrindavan is very austere. If we build little bungalows with modern convenience, is it okay? Oh yes, no problem. Harishwar Prabhu is asking, should we try to make an effort to have our own householders go and live on the farms? A special effort, if it is ready to do that? Like subsidies, what we were trying to. Rameshwar is still asking, but most people have jobs. What? So many people already have their jobs and their families. All right, let them not come, but those who are unemployed, let them come. But what about those who are having jobs? For those people who already have their jobs, instead of proposing that job, they'll be very soon jobless. Don't worry. They will come, they will be obliged to come. Now they have got job, but as soon as the days are advancing, Kali Yuga, they'll be jobless. Prabhupada took a secular outlook in this. Prabhupada also predicted that in 50 years to come, the whole civilization is going to crumble because of the oil problem and all that we will address. A lot of evidence is available now. The documentary that we are presenting today evening, 4 to 6, also has covered some of the evidences. The next documentary plan that we are working on, Make Vrindavan Villages, also will cover in a wide aspect of what are the problems that planet is facing and all these aspects.
Could you describe what you mean by the term the secular approach? I didn't understand what that term meant.
Spiritual outlook was proposing that why to practice Krishna consciousness we need to have agrarian based Varnasrama dharma, Devi Varnasrama dharma. While secular outlook goes to other areas of, if we don't have that, we can't survive. If we don't look at this kind of a solution, there's no way out. It's the only solution. To come to that conclusion, I'm approaching different areas of planet in trouble and why cities are not the best places to stay, and what are the solutions they're offering. Then coming to Devi Varnasrama.
Secular approach to, what do you mean, approach to what?
To conclusion of Devi Varnasrama.
Institution.
Yeah, to conclude that Devi Varnasrama is the solution, ultimate solution. For example, many people like Al Gore and so many people, they are proposing it's 11th hour, it's high time, and so on and so forth. But solutions are not known. So I'm taking all those aspects to propose that Devi Varnasrama solution. And also a question was raised that why is it self-sufficiency and Varnasrama dharma, is it same? So that also a little bit point to be raised. Few Prabhupada's quotes here. These towns and cities are flourishing on account of having so many industries, slaughter halls, brothels, cinema clubs and nightclubs. So city is mainly based on these things. It is said in Shastra that to live in the forest is Sattva-guna. Sattva-guna people have got tendency to live in a secluded place, solitary place without any disturbance. That is sign of Sattva-guna. And to live in cities, big cities, skyscraper building, that is Rajoguna. And to live in brothel, in the liquor shop, in the slaughterhouse, this is Tamoguna. Prabhupada in another place says city is based on slaughterhouses. In Indian context, there was a first war of independence in 1857, mainly due to use of beef fat in the cartridges. The sepoys were told to use the guns which contained beef fat. They were supposed to bite a bullet and then shoot it. So the sepoys, they made a big revolt against this, and that was called the first war of independence. It became a huge revolt all over India. It was well known as 1857 first.
Is it everyone following this explanation? Can you, Madhava, loudly, can you explain that?
Well, in 1857, the British, when they recruited the army, the Indians in the army, and they were working for the British Army, then they were telling, they had cartridges which you needed to bite and put into your guns, and then you got to shoot. So it was greased with, it had beef fat in it. That's what they say. There are two opinions about it, but the popular opinion at that time that it had beef in it, beef fat in it. So the sepoys at that time revolted that we are not going to do this. We're not going to take beef into our mouths. We're not going to use this. So they revolted, and which was the first sepoy mutiny of 1857, which started somewhere in Lucknow side, and it spread, yes, and it spread all over India. And the British were not able to stop it. I think later on because the Sikh.
Yeah, they made a lot of attempts, and finally they tried to curb it.
Crushed it.
But still, the fire was there, and that's how Mahatma Gandhi, based on non-violence, and he was very against of the slaughterhouse. He said, "I don't want independence. I want to stop the slaughterhouse."
I don't want independence?
Yeah, he said independence is secondary. First stop the slaughterhouse.
First stop slaughterhouse. What I understand or what I get from here, just in case, just to make it more clear, is that by nature, people, for example, here in India, who have had for centuries that culture, even though Varnasrama has been maybe not followed ideally as it should have, to deviate in such a way, I mean, if we look at what is happening now, of course, the deviation has gone way overboard, but to just even put some animal product in their mouth, as they were requested by the British Army, caused a whole revolution. In other words, they still had some attachment and respect for some basic principles connected with Dharma. And if we analyze, how far we have come now, where so many people from India, what's happening in India that'll be covered possibly, are not only allowing the slaughter of animals, but themselves also, eating beef and whatnot. So the degradation, has come quite extensively. Someone had a question.
How does this particular argument that there was a war because of that relates to that cities are flourishing on slaughterhouse?
I'm coming to that point. Yeah, the connection was that cities, Prabhupada mentioned that cities are based on slaughterhouses. And till today that problem exists. And why we raised this first war of independence was at how people naturally are against, but we don't know still things that are happening in the cities. If we clearly understand how cities are working, how economy is working, and how all these details, we clearly can understand that cities are really, not the places to stay for devotees. So I'm coming to the point of.
Well, there's one statement in the first canto, 11th chapter, verse number 12, the purport. Srila Prabhupada says, mills and factories supported by slaughterhouses are the necessary paraphernalia for the modern metropolis. And Prabhupada says this in that chapter where Krishna comes back to Dwarka. In that purport he says, and he says that actually if you analyze it, because of having slaughterhouses, because of that you don't have cows. When you don't have cows, whatever the cow gives you, you have to take it from industry. You have to make an industry for that. Everything. You take anything and it starts with the cow, and when you don't have it, then you have to replace it with something which you make for the modern. You have to make a whole industry for that. So you have lack of nutrition, then you have a whole nutrition industry. And it still doesn't suffice, then you have diseases, then you have a medicine industry. And then you have food problem, then you have water problem because you don't have cows, because you need more water for your crops. And crops are doing bad, so you pump in so many other things too. So it goes on and on and on. And in a very small area, the productivity increases far, far more if you have cows and their byproducts in it. Whereas if you want to do that artificially without the cow, you'll have to make a huge industry. And still it is not possible. So actually, cities are based on slaughterhouses.
And we are part of the problem. Okay. Why we are part of the problem is the food and cosmetics, the whole industry, the whole cosmetics that we we use, products that we use contain still beef products, beef byproduct. Very shocking. Many things are derived from this mainly trying to explain what are the things are animal origin. Food, this is just a partial list. Ice cream contains gelatin. Chocolate, biscuits and baked foods, chips, sugar, and now marketed as pure cow ghee contains animal fat. Very shocking. Evidences are available. We can't believe on what is happening. We can't believe on products. It's all just cheating and cheated business. Ice cream contains beta carotene, that is nothing but found in tissues of cows. Gelatin, emulsifiers, many times we see it contains added emulsifiers and so forth. They all are animal origin. Chocolates contain cocoa, not only gives chocolate, it gives unique smooth texture despite high standard fat content. Presence of stearic acid is there in chocolates, which is mainly derived from beef. Stearic is derived from tallow, which is beef fat. Water filters and cow bones. Cow bone is very prominently used in water filters. Very, very prominently used. The juice that we see, appy and all these juices, they all contain animal byproducts. So we can't believe on any products that are available. Most sources, I have a list of sources anybody wants to see. Even blood is used. It just gives a glimpse of how we are, a part of the problem in the city living. This goes on. This is all partialist again. Sorry. So, education system is also a major problem here in the cities that is being dealt more in detail tomorrow, called Varnasrama education as one of the modules. We have Macaulay's code, which not many might be aware of. Macaulay was on a supposed to submit a report to Queen Victoria in 1835. So he came to India, traveled all over India and studied the whole situation here, and this is what he had to say at the end in the British Parliament in 1835. He says, I have traveled across the length and breadth of India and have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber that I do not think who would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage, which is nothing but Varnasrama Dharma. I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system and culture, for if the Indians think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and will become what we want them, truly dominated nation. So today, the whole education system is completely replaced, and Prabhupada very clearly mentions education is nothing, the schools are slaughterhouses. So we need an alternative education system, which is, as I said, will be proposed tomorrow as Varnasrama education. So this is one major.
I can just add a little thing. As a poetic justice to Lord Macaulay, his grandson became a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And this is written in my Prabhupada book by Loknath.
Nice book.
So, even Macaulay will be safe. He probably took Prashadam on his way across India somewhere. Because in the first half he's glorifying the culture. So he got some benefit from that.
I have 10 minutes now. I won't go in detail of this issue, although a lot of evidences are available. I'll also refer to some of them. But just briefly touch upon what are the problems at present in the world. Al Gore explains very nice allegory or an example. He said there are two bowls. One bowl of water is made to boil and it becomes very hot. It's boiling very hot. And you take a frog and put it into water, the boiling water, immediately it jumps out because it senses the heat. There's another bowl of water, you put the frog inside, it's cold water, it will sit there, start boiling the water, it will sit there, water keeps increasing, the temperature keeps increasing, it keeps adapting to the temperature, it sits there. At a point comes, it's boiling, water is boiling, it will still adapt and sit there until somebody picks up and puts it outside. So similarly, planet is in trouble. We are not able to realize that. A lot of evidences are available. Prabhupada also predicted this. Kali-yuga is clearly mentioned. So with this, a lot of alternatives are coming out, which is the next issue. What are the problems? I'll just briefly touch. One is a false economy that we are living in. A lot of evidence is available. Madhav can also put a point here. Prabhupada also has a quote on this, which is this. Paper currency, he said, cheaters and cheated. It's just cheaters and cheated business in paper currency. Real wealth is cattle and grains. We have other evidences deteriorating oil and food security. Oil is the whole economy is based on oil today, and once we were discussing, like even the button is made up of petroleum. Food is supplied through petroleum vehicles. Everything is based on petroleum. If petroleum stops, which is going to happen, and there's a lot of science available now, there will be a big crash. Food security there's a lot of videos available of food security. And health issue, health is, cancer is becoming the major problem in the society. I work in a hospital, I know what's happening there at present. A lot of organ transplantations and so many things are being planned. Rising temperatures and rising seas, emerging water shortages, pollution, natural systems under threat. They're all early signs of decline of the whole modern civilization. References are Inconvenient Truth, 11th Hour, there's a movie called 11th Hour, Food Security, and so on and so forth. Clearly describes how bad is the situation right now in the world out. One or two points on false economy. India's grain harvest increased both by water scarcity and the loss of cropland to non-farm users has plateaued since 2000. This is just recent information, which means water is sucked out from the earth to feed the farms, which is totally artificial. That's 50% of the food produced in India is depending on this at present. And it has become the leading wheat exporter. Pumped out, sucked out.
Yeah.
So this explains the leading wheat exporter.
Last year was a wheat crisis of the world because India had to go out to the world to buy wheat. And they say by the year 2025, India will be a rice importer. And if in India, and by that time, will be one of the probably the largest population, if it starts importing wheat, rice, and the majority of the people are rice eaters, it's going to create a major world crisis around the world. Already last year, we had a major wheat crisis. India had to go shopping all over the place to buy wheat. And finally, they bought wheat from Australia, which was actually meant for cows, for their cattle. and that was the wheat which was supplied.
A few individual thinkers across. One of the well-known is Ted Trainer and rest others. Some of the quotes I quickly copied here. Global economy is basically a system of massive but legitimate expropriation. 6% of world income goes to the richest 20%, while the poorest 20% receive only 1.3% of it, etc., etc. Over 1.6 billion people were found to be getting poorer each year in terms of this economy, paper economy. And most of it goes to corporate wealth. He goes on to say there are two major mistakes, fundamentally mistaken commitments built into current economic system, that is market and growth. Everything is based on market economy. There is no exaggeration to say that market forces are responsible for more deprivations of human suffering and ecological destruction rather than any other single factor. Gandhi said that rich must live more simply so that poor may simply live. He quotes that very often. And two fundamental wrong things. Fundamental wrongs, he says, in the society at present is commitment to the market principle. We are committed to market principle. We are all out surrendered to the market principle. And associated notions such as competition, individualism, and maximizing freedom of corporations. An even bigger mistake is to do with the taken for granted commitment to affluence and growth. So a lot of solutions are thought of for a lot of problems existing, and major is the eco-village movement across the world happening. Ted Trainer continues to say industrialization is a major culprit. The whole capitalistic society is based on a philosophy that we all can have Mercedes-Benz one day. However, the limits of growth analysis, what he says, makes it clear that satisfactory and sustainable society cannot be a fluent, industrialized consumer society. It cannot be. So, alternative, he says, is it should be a much simpler, non-affluent living standard. Small, highly self-sufficient local economies, mostly using local resources to produce to meet local needs, with little trade between regions, let alone between nations. Highly participatory and cooperative systems, alternative technologies which minimize resource and environmental impacts. We need a totally different economy, one which is not driven by profit or market forces, in which there is no growth, and which much economic activity does not involve money. So Ted Trainer concludes that a sustainable society must therefore be defined in terms that extend well beyond taking social control of the market. It must focus on notions of simplicity, cooperation and self-sufficiency, and a long period of negative economic growth culminating in a steady state economy. Very good thinking, but practically not implemented. Some of the concepts are being implemented. That concept majorly is on ecology, and that's why this eco-village network. A lot of eco-village network revolution all over the world, and few are just to mention here. Global eco-village network, why eco-villages, trying to create why eco-villages. But there is a problem in all. They have some principles. Eco-villages, they look for these principles. Local organic food production should be there. If it has to, certify as an eco-village, then these are the basic criteria. Local organic food production, ecological building, renewable energy systems, cooperative social economies, inclusive decision-making processes, cultural and spiritual diversity, integrated holistic healthcare, global networking, but no cow protection. Ted Trainer, there is little. Many of them are clearly understanding the shortcomings of eco-village network. It includes wide diversity of initiatives, many of which are not consciously intending to pioneer a new world order. He says again, many eco-villages simply involve people in trying to build better circumstances for themselves, often within the rich world in quite self-indulgent ways. There are no principles, which calls for principle-based God-conscious communities. So conclusion is Daivi Varnasrama. Hare Krishna.
So that's it. So okay, anybody has any comments or questions on this presentation? Probably.
Question. Like we see in teaching of Prabhupada, he was sometimes very much fundamental about these things, like more orthodox. But sometimes, like when he came to America, he would eat from these rich frozen vegetables with Sally, Underwood, his family, you know. And sometimes he would eat in grains and trains, or tell his disciple it doesn't matter, it's everything is contaminated anyway. So how to accommodate what things? Because Prabhupada said both. He said we should grow our foods, but he also said it doesn't matter. Like you can take when you preach.
Who wants to answer that? Anybody?
Well, there's a difference between detail and principle, right? Like if you look at what Prabhupada was teaching in general, and then if you look what he might have said at some devotees in a specific situation where they were starving on a railway platform, that okay, you can get those samosas and things like that is different. Just like you will find Prabhupada is always preaching in his book that devotees should only marry once, But he had to do a specific mataji at one point because the guy took sannyas after 6 months, and it's okay, you can marry him. But in terms of what he taught, then you have to see what is the principle and what is the detail. Principle is, do you want to eat all the time contaminated food? Do you want to offer contaminated food to Krishna? Prabhupada said if you grow your own food, Krishna will be pleased 1,000 times more. If the whole offering comes from the devotee and not from a devotee. So in that sense we have to, but we're not fanatics. Some situation we have to preach this, that, but it cannot become like a credit card for, all the time deviating from the principles that, okay, then we're going to miss in the long run.
Many of the incidences you spoke about has to be seen in context. There was a specific context why Prabhupada said that to a particular person at a particular time. And actually that our spiritual, we understand spiritually that the Guru gives instructions to particular disciples according to a particular time and circumstance. And it's meant for that disciple. So there are some principles which are general and some principles which are specifically for specific disciples at specific times. Is that okay? Does anyone else have any comments or questions?
Beta-carotene contains animals on inside. You said beta-carotene is animal product.
Actually, beta-carotene is an animal. In chocolates, that is in reference to chocolate. Yeah. Yes. So they to stabilize or to make it equilibrium, they use stearic acid, which is product of tallow derived from cow beef fat.
So then Fanta, there is beta-carotene inside. Fanta. Soft drink.
Yeah, many soft drinks we can't believe because they contain stearic acid. It's clearly mentioned. Shaving creams contain allantoin, which is beef fat.
It's all over.
Yeah, it's interesting that
soap contains animal fat. There's a huge thing called rendering industry. All slaughterhouses, the byproducts. Actually, beef is a byproduct. This is a major market now. So all the byproducts are, including the blood, the horns, everything is ground and steamed.
They also think that cow is the source of all good things, but in a different way.
And we understand also that what we take into our body affects our consciousness. So practically speaking, if you don't produce your own food, your consciousness is being affected by all of these things, which you have no control over. In the West specifically, you buy your food from the supermarket, you don't know. You're taking in all these things, and it's affecting your consciousness. So if we want to, Prabhupada mentions, like for instance, we're not even supposed to eat chocolate or whatever. These subtle things are there. It seems like some devotees, let's taking it to an extreme. But what the point is that it's all about consciousness and how consciousness can be affected in very subtle ways. And when it is affected in subtle ways, then we can't perceive properly spiritual truths and we can't act properly. So we're being hindered every step of the way in terms of our spiritual realization because of the way the world is set up.
Health is a major problem because of consumption of animal fat. Major problem, cancers, heart diseases, they're all because of animal fat consumption, which people don't know where it's happening. The source is not known because everywhere it's animal fat.
And it's not just the whole overall city is just asking for disease, to live in the city. And I've seen in my personal life, that when I started to live on farms and remote places, that's one of the principles of bhakti, Bhakti is even, apart from the rest of it. We go there to preach, but we don't live. That's one of the principles of bhakti. We live in a holy place, a secluded place. And I can see what it does to my sadhana, to my health, to everything. It's becoming inconceivable now for me to practice Krishna consciousness without cows. There's a whole point you will not understand if you're not close to the cows. It's very difficult. Unless you're like a full-on, 108% preacher, but that's a very few, movement. Most of us are material desire, we need to dovetail, sort of things. And for that, it becomes, so your whole 20 years that you're going to spend in a Grihastha ashram, will make you a madhyam, so you can take sannyas and become a Nutam. Instead of remaining for another, 20 years and, kind of stadikari, and at the end, trying to become a madhyam and you take one across in sannyas. Because you get that purification is still going on while you go to the Grihastha ashram, and for everybody. It's just nicer. And the preaching, because also the way we've been preaching in the West has always been in the city, because if you're gonna preach in 1969 in the United States, you go to some village, I don't need no damn Bhagavad Gita. Obviously you're going to go to the city where you're going to find some alternative thinking people, artists, hippies, this, that. And so we were establishing the temples in the cities. When we came to places like India and other places, that trend continued to preach in the cities. But in India, you can go to a small village and you'll be very successful preaching. And actually, people are generally more pious in the village. And so ultimately, I'm trying to find that quote. This is something I've heard that I'd like to research. If anybody has any information on that, maybe somebody will know. The Prophet says we will have ultimate success with our distribution when it's done out of bullock cart.
The Prabhupada mentions about to go in your bullock cart 10 miles in every direction from the farm. When he was establishing the farms, he said the Sankirtan should be like that. We take the bullock cart and you go from village to village, distributing the books like that, and people will see we're living very simply, we're very happy, very satisfied, and they'll be impressed to see that people are living happy and simply. So we've come to the end now. Are there any other questions?
Yes. Prabhuji was telling that sugar is contaminated, but we see that most of the items who make sweets with sugar, even devotees. So will you just throw some light on why sugar is contaminated, whether it should be consumed or not?
Well, it's been discovered that most white sugar is refined using charcoal produced from cow bones, or calcium produced from cow bones. There are other alternatives. There are some places that don't use that, but the majority of places are using it. So there are alternatives, especially here in India. You've got gur, you've got mishri, different things you can use in India as an alternative to white sugar. In the West also there are alternatives, but you have to seek them out. In general, it's a question of Prabhupada sometimes would allow, in circumstances where there was nothing else, he would allow certain things to happen. So these are all questions that need to be addressed specifically to a specific time and place. What is there available? Can you get an alternative or not? like that. So in general, we should try to avoid those things, and that's the purpose of this whole. That was why Prabhupada wanted us to create these alternative communities, that we produce our own things, which are produced with love, not just offered with love, but actually the seed put into the ground, the land ploughed with love, the seed put into the ground with love, cultivated with love. It's a much more inclusive system. So that's the ultimate thing that we should do. So we have to be practical. In the cities, there are certain things we have to, live with certain contradictions to do the preaching. And for the preaching, is it Prabhupada said you can even eat cow flesh? I heard, maybe I'm wrong there. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's Bhaktisiddhanta.
Bhaktisiddhanta said.
This is a cow flesh. He says, give them meat if you need to, but get them to chant Hare Krishna.
So there are the wildly things that we would never even think about doing. But in an emergency situation, according to time, place, and circumstances, the sadhus recommend certain things. So we have to be practical and see what we can do. So that's it then. We've got to stop now. So if everyone would like to come back at 4 o'clock in the next room, classroom number 4. No, 4. The schedule has been changed because Prasadam is. We were going to stop earlier.
4 o'clock, room number 3.
Yeah, we were going to stop earlier, but now we've put module 3. Was this module 3 or 4?
3.
This is module 3. We've just had module 3, which would have been this afternoon. So now it's just module 4 this afternoon, starting at 4 o'clock next door. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
This morning we can leave here.
One thing is that we were told that better not to leave anything in the room if it is not safe, even when it is locked. So it's up to you.
And besides, we're going to be next door when we come back. There may be somebody else in this room, so you should take everything.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for allowing me to see this.
Do you have time to see the documentary this afternoon?